Hey, welcome back, Algebra 2. Today we're going to start off with polynomials. We're going to review how to add, subtract, and multiply them. So we're going to be working with polynomials. It is a monomial, so monomial is just one, or a sum of monomials. So monomial is, it could be a letter like X, it could be a number like 6, or you could multiply it together and it could be like 6x squared. So all these three are examples of monomials. Polynomial is that, or the sum of many monomials. So the monomials are as separated by a plus and a minus sign right here. So that's one, that's one, that's one. So we would call this a polynomial because there are many of them. Like terms, you have to remember, have the same variable and the same exponent. Like we could add 3x squared and 7x squared. And remember, you combine like terms by adding their coefficients, and then you just tag on the variable and its exponent. The variable and exponent never change. You just add the coefficients together. So if I want to simplify something like what I have here, anytime that you have parentheses, you're going to have to remember to distribute. So the first thing we're going to have to do is to distribute to get rid of parentheses. So I have 4xy squared plus 12xy minus 7x squared y. And then so the negative sign, when you distribute it, it just simply is going to change all those signs. If you don't like the fact that it's just a negative, you could put a 1 there if you want. So negative times that, just change the sign to negative 20xy. Negative times positive goes negative 5xy squared. And then the negative times the negative goes positive 8x squared y. So now we have to, step 2 is we are going to combine like terms. Like terms have the same variable and the same exponent. So I see a bunch of x's and y's. This xy squared is like the negative 5xy squared. So like terms have the same variable and matching exponents. So I'm going to regroup them together. And we have a 12xy. And that is like this term, the negative 20xy. And then finally, this is x squared y. And that is like the 8x squared y. So when you combine like terms, you just add the coefficients and tag on the variables. So 4 minus 5 is negative 1 xy squared. I'm going to combine these like terms. You have to remember to take the sign into account. So I have a plus 12 and a minus 20 adds up to negative 8 xy. Negative 7 plus 8 adds up to 1. So we're going to go plus 1 x squared y. I'm not going to get too worked up about which ones you put first and second when you have two variables. Technically, they should go in alphabetical order with biggest exponents first. Let's try this one. All right, so we just have a plus sign, and there's some property that says, so when you're adding two things together, those parentheses are not necessary. You can just drop the parentheses. And then we're just going to combine like terms. So when you combine like terms, when there is one variable, you do need to make sure that you're putting it in standard form. I have a plus minus here. The negative sign dominates. So I have a 6x squared minus 4x squared. Those are like terms. I have negative 7x, and it is like the plus 9x. And then finally, my constant terms are like, I'm going to add 8 and subtract 5. So when I combine like terms here, just combine your numbers out in front. 6 minus 4 is 2. Tag on the x squared. Negative 7 plus 9 is also 2. Tag on your x. And 8 minus 5 is 3. When you only have one variable like you do here, it does need to be in this order, which is called standard form. When you have one variable, it has to be in standard form. That means you go from biggest exponent first, and then they go in descending order there. Number 2 is kind of like the first one that we did up above. So nothing happens to the first set of parentheses. I'm just going to drop the parentheses and write them down. The subtraction sign here means that you have to distribute that negative to the 3 terms to the right, and that's going to change those signs. Negative times 2 is negative 2x squared. Negative times 3 is negative 3x. And negative times negative goes plus 1. I have a 4x squared minus 2x squared, and that adds up to 2x squared. I have a negative 5x and a negative 3x. You have to be super careful when you take your sign. Take your signs with the coefficient. Negative 5 minus 3 adds up to negative 8x. And then we have a plus 6 and a plus 1, which adds up to 7. So after a while, you can probably just kind of do it like that and then make sure everything shows up in standard form. Number 3 and 4. So number 3, we have some multiplication going on. You have to remember that when you multiply variables, you add your exponents. So you could put a little 1 on there on that exponent if you would like. Numbers multiply and variables add. So when I take 3 times 2, I get 6. And x times x squared is x to the third. So the coefficients multiply, and then the variables, you just add your exponents together. So now you have to distribute to the next. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 for the coefficient. And x times x, there's an invisible 1 on that one, means that's x to the second. 6 times 3 is 18, and then you just have the 1x from that one. And that turned out to be in standard form, and there's no like terms here. Here I have a fraction that I'm distributing in. So when you have a fraction times something that's not, I recommend that you put those numbers over 1. So when I take 4/3 x squared times, it'd be like times 6 over 1 x squared. So we're going to multiply our numbers straight across, and then those x squareds, they're just implied to be in the numerator as well. So I'm really just multiplying the entire numerator together. I'm going to multiply the coefficients first, so 6 times 4 is 24. And then x squared times x squared, add them and you get x to the fourth. And then when you multiply all the denominators together, 3 times 1 is just 3. All right, so I have 4/3 times 9. So multiply your numerators. 4 times 9 is 36. And then I would just multiply my denominators. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I would multiply my variables next. X to the second times x to the first. Add those and you get x to the third. And then distribute the next one. 4 times negative 12 is negative 48. And then multiply your denominators. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I have x squared times nothing, which just gives me x squared. So then I would go through and I would reduce all of my fractions. 24 divided by 3 is 8. 36 divided by 3 is 12. And 48 divided by 3 is 16. So that's how I would handle distributing fractions into it. Let's see what we have on the back side. All right, so we're just going to have more of the same. When you do number 5, you're going to distribute the 2x into the first set of parentheses. Its job is done when the parentheses end. And then you're going to distribute negative 3x into the next set of parentheses, and then its job ends, and then you just have the minus 4. So 2x times negative 1x squared is negative 2x to the third. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. X times x is x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x. That job is done. Negative 3x times x squared is negative 3x to the third. Just had to add your exponents. Here I'm going to take negative 3 times 2 and get negative 6. And x times x is x squared. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15x. And then bring down and rewrite your negative 4. Now I need to go through and combine all my like terms. So I have a negative 2x to the third and a negative 3x to the third. You add your coefficients, and that adds up to negative 5x to the third. So as I'm combining like terms, I glance first and I see what has the biggest exponent, and then I do them first, and then I just go in descending order by exponents, and then that's how everything just ends up in standard form in the fewest steps possible. So x squared comes next in standard form. Add your coefficients. Negative 6 minus 6 is negative 12 x squared. And then the x's come next. I have a plus 8 and a minus 15. That adds up to negative 7x. And then I don't have any constant, so you just write that one down. Number 6. Now we have a binomial times a binomial. So you have to remember to distribute, and sometimes you call that FOIL. I just call it distribute. So I'm going to take the 4n times the 3n. So 4 times 3 is 12. N times n is n squared. And then I take 4n times 2, which is 8n. Its job's done. Now you're going to distribute negative 6 into the parentheses. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18n. And negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. So your middle terms are your only like terms. The first one I'm not going to do anything with, just rewrite it. These two middle terms are like terms, so I have a plus 8 and a minus 18. Adds up to negative 10n. And then I don't have any other constants, so I just write it down. Number 7, the only tricky thing is that you have to also remember to add your exponents when you do that one. So I'm going to multiply and distribute it just like I did number 6. So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th, because when you multiply variables, you add exponents. X squared times negative 5 is negative 5x squared. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. These middle two are my only like terms. I don't have any other x to the 4, so I just write it down. It stays. Negative 5 minus 2 adds up to negative 7x squared. And bring down your constant. Fully simplified, all done. Number 8 is just longer. If you multiply it correctly, you should wind up with 6 terms before you start combining them. So start off with your 2x squared, and it gets distributed. 2x squared times 3x is 6x to the 3rd. 2x squared times negative 1, is negative 2x squared. Now we're going to move on to the negative 4x and distribute it. Negative 4x times 3 is negative 12x squared. Negative 4 times negative 1 is a plus 4x. And then go to your 5. 5 times 3x is 15x. And 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. So I can see that I have these two like terms because they each have an x squared. And these two with an x are like terms. I don't have any other x to the 3rd, so I'm just going to write it down. Negative 2 minus 12 adds up to negative 14x squared. The 4 plus 15 adds up to 19x. And then I don't have any other constants, and so I just write it down. No other like terms. It's in standard form because it goes biggest exponent and down to none. Hopefully you're still with me. 4, 9, and 10. When you have something squared, that means you just multiply it by itself. So like if you had 3 squared, that just means that you take 3 times 3, which would be 9. So anytime that you have a binomial being squared, first thing you're going to do is just write it out. That means you're just taking x plus 4 times x plus 4. Now we're going to do just like we did on 6 and 7. We're going to FOIL, multiply, distribute, whatever it is you like to call it. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. Now move on to the 4 and distribute. 4 times x is another 4x. And 4 times 4 is 16. Combine like terms in the middle. I get an x squared plus 8x plus 16. And then on this one, anytime you see square, the first thing you do is you write it out correctly. 3x minus 1 times 3x minus 1. Now we're going to FOIL, multiply, distribute. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Now distribute the negative 1. Negative 1 times 3x is another negative 3x. Negative 1 times negative 1 turns into plus 1. You have to be super careful because you have to remember that a negative plus another negative, it just gets more negative. This is 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. I can tell you the most common mistake that somebody's going to make is you're going to think that adds up to 0, but it does not. And for number 11, give it a try and check my answers later.